Good morning. I'm Stephanie Benvenuto, Chair of the San Diego Housing Commission Board of Commissioners. It is 9:02 on June 10th, 2022, and I'm calling to order the special meeting of the board. The process we're using for today's meeting is authorized by Government Code Section 54953E, which was added by Assembly Bill 361. This allows the Housing Commission to use teleconferencing and provide the public with an opportunity to address the board through a call-in or internet-based option during a proclaimed state of emergency. The San Diego City Council on May 24th, 2022 declared that a state of emergency continues to directly impact the ability of members to safely meet in person. The council also declared that this applies to all boards, commissions, and committees in the city of San Diego. So this meeting is occurring by video conference with all board members, our interim president and CEO, Housing Commission staff, and general counsel participating by video. For the record, I'll ask each board member to indicate their presence as I say their name. Vice Chair Ryan Klumpner.
Here.
Commissioner Johanna Hester.
Here, thank you.
Commissioner Keeley Hubbard.
Good morning, Madam Chair.
Okay, Commissioner Mitch Mitchell is here. Commissioner Melinda Vasquez.
Here.
Great. Good morning, everybody. No members of the public are in attendance. However, members of the public may watch the video conference and hear the audio of today's meeting, which is being streamed live online. The agenda for today's meeting included a link to the website for the San Diego Housing Commission Board of Commissioners, where the public can access the live streaming for today's meeting. The public has also been provided with an alternative opportunity to provide comments to the board through an online comment form and a toll-free phone number. A link to the comment form was included on the agenda for today's meeting, which was posted on our website, www.sdhc.org, on June 2nd. The agenda and the public comment form explain that comments about items on the agenda will be read into the record if submitted by 4 p.m. yesterday, June 9th. Non-agenda public comments submitted by 8 o'clock this morning will be read into the record. In addition, members of the public who wish to speak on an item may call the toll-free phone number that's included on our agenda. Members of the public should monitor the meeting through the live video streaming available through the Housing Commission website, www.sdhc.org. Again, today's agenda includes a link to the website for this board where the public can access that live streaming. Members of the public should call the toll-free phone number only when the item they want to comment on is introduced. If they call and comment on an item different from the one that we're currently considering, we'll ask them to call back and hang up at the appropriate time. Members of the public will have 3 minutes each to provide their comments, but if we have a large number of callers wishing to speak on a single item, we may limit them time-wise. Non-agenda public comments. The phone line is now open to provide non-agenda public comments. You can call 833-610-2513 to be placed in the queue to provide those comments. This is the time when members of the public may provide comments to the Housing Commission Board about topics that are not on our agenda but involve a subject within the Commission's area of responsibility. The Commission can't take action on non-agenda public comments, but again, that number is 833-610-2513. We had no written non-agenda public comments submitted for today's meeting. I'll now ask.
Bien. How are you?
It sounds like we have our call, first caller. Good morning, sir.
It's going all right. Sorry, what was that?
You're welcome to make your comments.
Is it all right? Had a hard week this week for sure. Oh shit.
Madam Chair, that's not from our phone line. I think someone may be not muted on the call.
Oh, well, guys, let's all check and see our whether or not we've muted, but I am rooting for a person having a tough week. It was a pretty brutal week indeed. I agree. But if you don't wish for folks to know what's going on, you might want to just double check that you are muted, everybody. Good practice in our Zoom times. Scott, will you just let me know when our time is up then?
Yes, we have about 10 seconds left.
Okay, great, thanks.
That concludes the time, and there are no callers for non-agenda public comment.
Thank you. Now we're going to ask if any commissioners would like to make any comments. Watch and see if we have anybody come off mute. Okay, we'll move on to our report from the interim president and CEO. Jeff?
Good morning, commissioners. I understand that we have a couple of commissioners that are limited in time this morning, the time that they can be with us. So I will be providing my report in an email immediately after today's meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the Housing Housing Commission Board special meetings of May 5th and May 31st, 2022. The phone line is now open for public comments about the minutes. You can call 833-610-2513 to be placed in the queue. We had no written public comments submitted regarding the minutes. But again, that number is 833-610-2513.
That concludes the time, and we do not have any callers regarding the minutes.
Thanks. Felt like a long minute and a half. That concludes the public comment period for the minutes. Do any commissioners wish to make any changes to the minutes, or is there a motion?
So move.
Motion by Commissioner Hester. I see a second by Commissioner Vasquez. We'll go ahead and call a vote. Vice Chair Clump. Oh, no, I'm sorry. You wanted to speak? Okay. Go ahead.
I wasn't present for the meeting on May 5th, so I think it's appropriate for me to recuse on that motion. So I move to split the to split the motion so that I can properly vote for both of them.
Okay. Commissioner Hester, are you okay with that?
I'm still motioning to pass the minutes, right?
Yeah, we'll do a split vote on them if that's okay. So we'll vote first on the May 5th minutes. Vice Chair Klumpner.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hester.
Aye.
Commissioner Hubbard. I don't believe she's with us. Okay. Commissioner Mitchell.
Aye.
Commissioner Vasquez.
Abstain.
Thank you. And on my vote in favor, that's 4 in favor and 1 abstaining. And now we'll go ahead and move the vote on May 30 for the minutes on May 31st. Vice Chair Klumpner.
Aye.
Commissioner Hester.
Aye.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Aye.
Commissioner Vasquez.
Aye.
Okay, and I'll add my vote in favor. That motion carries unanimously. We're going to move on to our consent agenda. And this morning, I'm proposing that items 101, 102, and 103 be placed on consent. Item 101 is the amendment to the contract with BASC to provide ongoing support for the COVID-19 Housing Stability Assistance Program. Item 102 is the 2022 to 2023 procurement of general liability insurance coverage. And item 103 is the award of a contract to mental health systems to operate the serial inebriate program. The phone line is now open for public comments about items 101, 102, and 103. You may call 833-610-2513 to be placed in the queue. We did not receive any written public comments regarding these 3 items, but again, that number is 833-610-2513. Scott, do we have any callers?
We do not have any callers. We have 1 minute and 15 seconds left on the clock.
Thank you.
That concludes the time, and there are no callers regarding the minutes.
Thank you. This concludes the public comment period for items 101, 102, and 103. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Mitchell. I see Vice Chair Klempner has come off mute. Are you seconding or are you just preparing to vote?
Second.
Oh, sorry. Okay. So we have a motion by Commissioner Mitchell, a second by Vice Chair Klempner. We'll go ahead and call the vote. Vice Chair Klempner,
Aye.
Commissioner Hester,
Aye.
Commissioner Mitchell,
Aye.
and Commissioner Vasquez. You're on mute, Commissioner Vasquez.
In the discussion, normally when we have an action point of information, I don't understand why we didn't discuss the matter first before we're voting on it.
That putting them on consent?
Is it on consent?
We did,
three-
Commissioner Vasquez, she announced the items that were that were going to be listed on the consent agenda. And so we were voting to approve the consent, those items that are on the consent agenda.
Okay, I'll change my vote to aye.
Okay. Thank you. I'll add my vote in favor. Motion carries unanimously. We'll now proceed with the remaining items on our agenda, and there are plenty. The PowerPoint presentations were emailed to the commissioners yesterday, June 9th, and are posted on the commission's website. Due to some potential scheduling conflicts for board members, we're going to take some of our agenda items out of order this morning. We have a slide that shows the order in which the items will be presented. Go ahead and set that up. Thank you. We will begin with items 107, 108, and 109, which are loan recommendations for affordable housing development and exceptionally time sensitive. Then we'll hear item 106, which is a preliminary bond authorization for an affordable housing development. And then those presentations will be followed in order by the remaining items on the agenda, items 100, 104, 105, and 110. Thank you in advance, everybody, for your patience. But we'll go ahead and get started. Our first is item 107, the loan recommendation for the Iris Trolley development. The phone line is now open for public comments about item 107. You may call 833-610-2513 to be placed in the queue. There were no written public comments submitted regarding this item. Again, though, that number is 833-610-2513. We'll take public comments after staff presentation, and that will come to us from Vice President of Multifamily Housing Finance, Jennifer Kruder. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Benvenuto and Commissioners. The item before you today is a request to approve a $4,915,200 residual receipts loan for the new construction of Iris Trolley, which has since been renamed to Iris Avenue Trolley Apartments. Next slide. Iris Avenue Trolley Apartments is the proposed construction of a 64-unit project, which is made up of 63 affordable units and 1 unrestricted manager unit. The project is located at 1507 Howard Avenue in Council District 8. The proposed project's 63 affordable units will be a mix of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units for individuals and families with area median income levels of 30 to 50% for 55 years. As the development is transit oriented, it will be nearby a trolley station and bus line for easy access to nearby health and wellness facilities. Next slide. The developer, Eden Housing, applied for a residual receipts loan through the Housing Commission's fiscal year 2022 Notice of Funding Availability and received a preliminary award of up to $4,915,200 for the development. Services for the tenants will be provided by Eden Housing Resident Services. Examples of services will include financial literacy classes and after-school tutoring. Next slide. The site, presented by the red pin on the map, is located at 1507 Howard Avenue in Council District 8. It is located just north of the 905. Next slide. As represented on this slide, this transit-oriented development is across the street from the Iris Avenue Transit Center and Trolley Station. Next slide. The total development cost of the project is approximately $32.9 million, which equates to a per unit cost of approximately $514,000. Notable sources of funding include a permanent loan, loans from the City of San Diego Housing Commission, infill infrastructure grant, and 9% tax credits. Please note, the staff report mentions funding from the county's No Place Like Home program. However, the correct funding sources are listed on the slide, as well as table 3 of the staff report. Next slide. Units will be restricted at 30 to 50% of area median income for 55 years. Rents will range from $682 to $1,575 per month. Next slide. Should this be approved today, the developer will apply for 9% tax credits at the end of this month on June 30th, 2022. Should the developer receive an award of tax credits, the developer expects to close financing and start construction in March 2023 and complete construction in October 2024. Next slide. Here's an architect's rendering of the proposed development. Next slide. Eden Housing will serve as the developer, property manager, and resident services provider for Iris Avenue Trolley Apartments. The architect will be Glow Architecture, and Cannon Constructors will serve as a general contractor. The remainder of the development team will be selected at a later date. Next slide. Staff recommends that the board take the actions detailed in the staff report and shown on this slide. Next slide. This concludes the presentation. I, along with a representative from the developer, Eden Housing, are available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott, do we have any callers?
There are no callers for this item.
Okay, great. Commissioners, we'll go ahead and move into questions or comments.
Madam Chair, I just would like to commend the project. I love the fact that, you know, I've expressed my concern about building along the 905 without putting it next to access to mass transit. This project, you know, definitely addresses all the concerns I've expressed around that aspect. And so kudos, and hopefully there's a lot more like it coming.
Thank you. Commissioner Hester.
Yeah, I didn't catch, but what is our timeline? This is a very exciting project. Again, being that it's targeting a housing near transportation area. So something that, you know, commissioners have spoken about quite a bit. But what is the timeline again, please?
So if it's approved, then it will apply for 9% tax credits on June 30th, 2022. And then if they receive an award, then they will close financing and start construction in March of next year, and then complete construction in October 2024, so the following year.
Very good, thank you.
Great, thanks. I just had one comment in that I love anything that has a 3-bedroom. I think that's always wonderful to add that supply for families, and even just intergenerational setup. I know that there's plenty of folks who are caretaking as well for an older parent or something along those lines. But I'm curious, the timeline is wonderful. Obviously, 9% tax credits, we're moving into competitive, throws a big question mark. How does staff evaluate possible changes in supply costs and all of that? I mean, just the hard costs of, we're reading about the inflation and all of that. How are we baking that into our evaluations? Or maybe the developer wants to speak to that, I'm not sure.
Good morning, Chair Benvenuto. To answer your question, Colin Miller, SPP Multifamily. What we do is the developer will often have a contingency built into their construction, and so we understand that we are early in the process, but this is the rising construction costs have been something that's been affecting affordable housing since, you know, even before the pandemic began. So the developer has a construction contingency built into the project. What we also have is that if there are cost overruns, the developer fee is something that the developer can use to help to cover any cost overruns that may come up. And of course, if the cost overruns exceed the contingency and the developer fee, the developer often could go out and apply for more funding. But our loan commitment would not change. We would not increase it.
Great, thank you. And it is nice to see Eden projects. I know that just in the time that I've been on the commission, I'm seeing their name pop up more and more. That's wonderful to have a diversity of different players here in town. So do we have any other questions or comments or a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve.
I see Commissioner Vasquez has her hand up. We'll pause that for a second. Commissioner Vasquez?
Yes, I had a couple questions before we move into to voting. First, I mean, it's semantical, but the executive summary says that there's 63 units, but the proposed lease agreement says there's 64 units. So I just wanted to make sure how many units were involved.
It's 63 affordable units and 1 unrestricted manager's unit. So the 63 is just referring to the affordable number.
Okay, excellent. And then I noticed that in the purchase option, the Housing Commission has the opportunity to repurchase the property after 15 years of the tax credit compliance. However, I was wondering if we could also add a purchase option that at 55 years, when the covenant expires, that the Housing Commission can have an option to purchase the units, so that we don't see, we don't have the units demolished and then replaced with fair market value units without us having an opportunity to purchase them.
Sure, we can talk to the developer about that. The our NOFA, the funding requirements, in order for the developer to receive an award through our NOFA, they were required to agree to the 15-year purchase option. So the 55-year purchase option is something we can discuss with them. What we often see in tax credit deals is that at the end of the initial, the IRS requires a 15-year compliance period, even though the state requires a 55-year. What we often see, and if you look at the financing, the perm mortgage is usually a 17-year with a 35-year AM. And so at the end of that set, and in that 17th year, the developer will usually come back and refinance the project. And if they would come back to us, and we would kick out that affordability term for another 55 years. So happy to discuss that with the developer, but usually they're refining, and we're having a chance to preserve that affordability in year 17.
Okay, that's all I have.
Madam Chair.
Sorry, Commissioner Hester.
Yes, in the future, I'd like to request seeing of the units we're building, how many have accessibilities? And if we have in the future, affordable housing that sort of suits the needs to, around childcare. So those are the two things that I just want to flag for staff around this, if I can do that.
Yes, we'll look into that. Yes.
Commissioner Vasquez. You're on mute.
I just had one more question. Sorry, regarding closing costs. It states that the borrowers are going to pay escrow, title, and closing costs, including title insurance. Typically, those closing costs are shared between the seller and the buyer. So you would have, like, the owner's title insurance would be paid obviously by would be paid by the seller, and then the lender's title insurance would be paid by the buyer. Just curious as to why the commission is taking on the responsibility of all of the closing costs.
Yes, we're not taking on that responsibility. The developer is paying those costs.
Okay. Okay, we did have a motion. Well, unless there's any other comments, we did have a motion. Does somebody want to? Okay, Commissioner Hester will second. We'll go ahead and call that vote. Vice Chair Klumpner.
Aye.
Thanks. I know that you have a glitchy internet situation. So Commissioner Hester.
Aye.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Aye.
And Commissioner Vasquez.
Aye.
Great. And we didn't have Commissioner Hubbard join, right? I'll make sure I'm not missing anybody. I'll add my vote in favor, and that motion carries unanimously. Our next item is item 108, the loan recommendation for Navajo Family Apartments. The phone line is now open for public comments about item 108. You can call 833-610-2513 to be placed in the queue. There were no written public comments submitted regarding this item, but again, the number to call is 833-610-2513. We'll take public comments after the staff presentation, and that will come from Senior Vice President of Housing Finance and Property Management, Colin Miller. Colin, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Benvenuto and Commissioners. The item before you today is a request to approve a proposed residual receipt loan in an amount not to exceed $3,379,200 for the construction of the Navajo family apartments. Next slide, please. The proposed project will be comprised of 44 units, which will be a mix of 1, 2, and 3-bedroom units for individuals and families, as well as 1 unrestricted manager's unit. The 44 units will remain affordable for 55 years at 30 through 60% of area median income. The development will be located at 7005 Navajo Drive in the San Carlos neighborhood in Council District 7. The project is served by MTS bus line 115 that is within a half-mile of the site at Navajo and Jackson Road. The Grantville Trolley Station is approximately 4.2 miles from the site. Next slide, please. The developer, Community Housing Works, applied for a residual receipts loan through the Housing Commission's fiscal year 2022 Notice of Funding Availability and received a preliminary award of up to $3,379,200 for the development of the project, as well as 8 project-based housing choice vouchers, which are non-PSH. Services for the tenants will be provided by Achieve Resident Services. Programs and services will be offered to all residents, ongoing in nature and at no cost to the residents, and will be provided in the to-be-built on-site community center. Examples of services will include financial well-being, next generation success, and health and wellness. Next slide, please. The site is currently occupied by a approximately 3,500 square foot restaurant with open parking on the southern side of Navajo Road. The existing building will be demolished along with the existing parking lot. Navajo Family Apartments proposed unit amenities will include Energy Star appliances, as well as air conditioning, low flow plumbing fixtures, energy efficient dual pane windows, and a private balcony or attached porch. Site amenities will include a community room, computer room, conference room, bicycle storage, laundry facilities, and a tot lot. The Keels grocery store is located nearby, as well as Cowles Mountain and the San Carlos Golf Course. Next slide, please. As shown on this slide, there are multiple bus lines are located within a quarter mile to half mile of the property along Navajo and Jackson roads. And again, trolley service is available 2.5 miles from the property at the Grantville Trolley Station. Next slide, please. The total development cost of the project will be approximately $25.6 million, which equates to $570,542 per unit. Permanent sources of funding include a conventional loan, tax credit equity, a proposed Housing Commission loan, fee waivers, and deferred developer fee. Next slide, please. The property will be comprised of 21 one-bedroom, 11 two-bedroom, and 12 three-bedroom units at 30, 50, and 60% of area median income, as well as the 1 unrestricted manager's unit. Rents will range from $732 to $2,030 per month for the 1 through 3-bedroom units. Eligible households and individuals will have incomes ranging from $31,250 to $78,060 based on the 2022 rent and income chart. 8 future residents will be selected from the Housing Commission's project-based housing voucher waiting list. Next slide, please. Should you approve these actions today, the developer will submit a 9% application to TCAC on June 30th with an anticipated award on September 28th. Should the developer be successful, the development would close construction financing November 2022 and begin construction with an anticipated construction completion occurring December 2023. Next slide, please. This slide summarizes the development team. The developer, Community Housing Works, is an experienced nonprofit developer with a history of successful projects developed in partnership with the Housing Commission. The rest of the team has either been selected or will be selected as we approach closing. Next slide, please. Staff recommends that the board take the actions detailed in the staff report and shown on the following slides. Next slide, please. I, along with representatives from the developer, are happy to answer any questions you may have. I appreciate your time. This concludes the presentation.
Thank you. Scott, did we have any callers on this one?
We do not have any callers. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions or comments? Commissioner Mitchell, off mute, just say no. Commissioner Hester, Commissioner Vasquez.
I would just request the same thing earlier, right? Like just to maybe expand on the report, accessibilities and childcare facility availability.
Yeah, absolutely, Commissioner. So we can do that. And so just to be clear, for all the tax credit projects that we're bringing forward, TCAC requires wheelchair accessibility in 10% of the units, and that 4% of the units be accessible to individuals with visual or hearing impairment. So there is every development that we bring to you will have those requirements baked into them. As far as the childcare services, happy to add that in the report. I know the development plans to build a tot lot at this project, but we can definitely expand on that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Commissioner Vasquez?
Yes, I was curious as to how much on an annual basis this loan would render income to the Housing Commission. I couldn't.
Oh, as far as the projected repayments?
Correct.
Yeah, so the cash flow will be determined. We share the cash flow, and so we would get 50% of the cash flow. And so I can pull the pro forma and then email that over to you. I don't have the pro forma right in front of me, but every year that there's cash flow, the way our residual receipt loans work, once the deferred developer fee is paid, half the cash flow goes to the limited partner, in this case, Community Housing Works. The other half is split among the residual receipt lenders. And in this case, we are the only residual receipt lender. I have trouble with that phrase. And so we would be receiving half the cash flow.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you. Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Motion by Commissioner Mitchell, seconded by Commissioner Hester. You guys are a dynamic duo this morning. We'll go ahead and call the vote. If you guys are the ones hot on the motion button. Vice Chair Klempner.
Aye.
Commissioner Hester.
Aye.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Aye.
And Commissioner Vasquez.
Aye.
Okay, and I'll add my vote in favor. Motion carries unanimously. Our next item is 109, the loan recommendation from Messina Senior Apartments. The phone line is now open for comments about item 109. You can call 833-610-2513 to be placed in the queue. There were no written public comments submitted. Again, though, that number is 833-610-2513, and we'll take public comments after the staff presentation, which will come to us from Senior Vice President of Housing, Finance, and Property Management, Colin Miller. Colin, whenever you're ready.
Good morning again, Chair Benvenu and Commissioners. The item before you today is a request to approve a residual receipts loan in an amount not to exceed $3,950,000 for the Messina Senior Apartments. Next slide, please. The proposed project will be comprised of 78 units, which will be a mix of studio and one-bedroom units for individuals age 62 and older, as well as one unrestricted manager's unit. The 78 units will remain affordable for 55 years at 30 to 80% of San Diego's area median income. The development is proposed to be located at 5255 Mount Etna Drive in the Claremont Mesa neighborhood. The project is served by bus line 27, which is within a quarter mile of the site on Genesee, as well as the Balboa Avenue trolley station, located approximately 2.5 miles west of the property. Next slide, please. The developer Chelsea Investment Corporation applied for a residual receipts loan through the Housing Commission's fiscal year 2021 notice of funding availability and received a preliminary award of up to $3,950,000 for the development, as well as 8 project-based housing choice vouchers. Services for tenants will be provided by serving seniors. Examples of services will include meals, workshops, healthcare services, case management, and social activities. Next slide, please. The project will be located at the former county crime lab site along Messina Drive and Balboa Avenue. It's also located near a Walgreens. There's a Target, a Vons, and that 99 Ranch Market, all located nearby. The Messina Senior Apartments building will include a 6,000 square foot community space, of which 1,800 square feet will be a private senior community common area. The remaining 4,200 square feet will be the public senior center, where serving seniors will provide services free of charge to all residents. Services for the senior population, as I mentioned before, will include meals, workshops, and classes, volunteer opportunities, health services, case management, and social activities. Next slide, please. As shown in this slide, multiple bus lines are located within a quarter mile of the property on Genesee Avenue, as well as along on Balboa Avenue. Trolley service is available 2.5 miles from the property at the Balboa Avenue trolley station. Next slide, please. The total development cost of the project will be approximately $37.9 million, which equates to $480,310 per unit. Permanent sources of funding include a conventional loan, tax credit equity, land contribution, a proposed housing commission loan, as well as deferred developer fee and solar tax credit equity and rebates. Next slide, please. The property will be comprised of 5 studio and 73 one-bedroom units at 30 to 80% of area median income, as well as the unrestricted manager's unit that I mentioned earlier. Rents above 60% are allowable under TCAC through their income averaging program, which allows for rents up to 80% of area median, provided that the total average of all units at the property is 60% of area median income or less. Rents will range from $636 to $1,940 per month for a studio through one-bedroom units. Eligible households and individuals will have incomes ranging from $27,350 to $83,800 based on the 2022 rent and income chart. 8 future residents will be selected from the Housing Commission's project-based housing choice voucher waiting list. Next slide, please. Should you approve these actions today, the developer will submit a 9% application to TCAC on June 30th, with an anticipated award on September 28th. Should the developer be successful, the developer will close construction financing in March of 2023 and begin construction, with an anticipated construction completion occurring May of 2024. Next slide, please. This slide summarizes the development team. I'd like to point out that the developer is Chelsea Investment Corporation, an experienced for-profit developer with a long history of successful projects developed in partnership with the Housing Commission. Social services will be provided by Serving Seniors, and the general contractor is Emerson Construction. The remainder of the development team is summarized on this slide. Next slide, please. Staff is recommending that the board take the actions detailed in the staff report and shown on the following slides. Next slide, please. I, along with representatives from the developer, are happy to answer any questions you may have. I appreciate your time, and this concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Colin. Scott, do we have any callers?
We do not have any callers. Thank you.
Okay, great. Commissioners, do we have any questions or comments? Commissioner Vasquez?
Yes, I just have a couple questions. First, in looking at the paperwork from staff, it was difficult to determine who actually owns the property at this time, because it said that the corporation is going to be created by with three entities. So
yeah, happy to answer that question. So the County of San Diego currently owns the site. They've entered into a disposition and development agreement with Chelsea Investment Corporation. The purpose of the agreement is to provide for the development of the subject and the additional phases of the overall development on the parcel. Each of the projects will have a ground lease with the county.
Okay, thanks. That's helpful. Is there an option to purchase well, there wouldn't be an option to purchase on a ground lease. Can any provisions be made to provide for a requirement that the owners make sure to invest in the property on a regular basis instead of allowing the property to dilapidate? Because what I've seen historically is the developers come in, they build the affordable housing units, they wait for them to, for the covenant to expire, and then they claim that they need to tear down the units and replace them with fair market value units. So is there any kind of precaution or additional requirement that the leaseholders invest into the units periodically?
Right, so the disposition and development agreement with the county would require the property remain affordable for in perpetuity. So the risk of the development being torn down and replaced with market rate units, I think, would be addressed by the county's requirements. As far as the maintenance of the property, these properties, because of the sources of funds being used, not only Housing Commission funds, and also we have tax credit equity, both groups, the Housing Commission as well as the state, go out and inspect units on an annual or semi-annual basis to ensure that the property is being held to a certain standard. So we have that baked into all the properties that we loan funds to and all the properties that we would be issuing bonds for.
Okay. We just know of a situation recently in the last meeting where that wasn't the case. So I'm curious as to know the difference, but I understand that that's not germane to the main motion or to this action item. I guess the last question that I have is you mentioned, and maybe I heard you incorrectly, but that this was 60% and below. And in my counting of the units, we do have workforce housing included at 80%. So
Right. So
just clarify.
happy to reiterate what I mentioned in the presentation. So there are units at 80% of AMI, and they are allowed to be at 80% of AMI due to what TCAT calls their income averaging rule, and that allows for, as long as the total of units, as long as the total AMI average is 60% or below, they're allowed to have units that go up to 80. If you, I don't know, Garfer, if you can pull the slide that has the unit mix, I can show you what I'm talking about. So, okay, thank you. So as you'll notice, there are units at 80% and units at 30, 40, 50, and 60. So when you take that average, the average is 60% or below. And I believe that 80 should say 7 and not 73. That's carryover. So in general, so that's how we're able to get then stay in compliance with TCAC, because the average is 60%.
Okay, thank you for explaining. Appreciate it.
Yep.
That's all I have.
I'll make a motion, Madam Chair.
Okay. Is there a second? Actually, I'll go ahead and second, because this is actually in my neighborhood, and the Ivy, which was built very close by this, which is another senior affordable development, has been immensely successful. And for all of the crowing that the community did, it has been quiet and a wonderful addition. And I know that this will be the same. I believe I might be stealing some of Vice Chair Klumpner's thunder with that comment, also a resident of the community, and I believe supportive of, there you go, that. So I'll go ahead and second that. We'll call the vote. Vice Chair Klumpner. Vice Chair Klumpner.
Aye.
Okay, Commissioner Hester.
Aye.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Aye.
And Commissioner Vasquez.
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries unanimously. And our next item is item 106. The Preliminary Bond Authorization and Tax Equity and Fiscal Responsibility Act, or TEFRA hearing for Iris and San Ysidro Apartments. The TEFRA hearing is now open. The phone line is also now open for public comments about item 106. You may call 833-610-2513 to be placed in the queue. There were no written public comments submitted regarding this item, but again, that number is 833-610-2513. We'll take those comments after the staff presentation, and we'll be hearing again from Vice President of Multifamily Housing Finance, Jennifer Kruder, whenever you're ready.
Thank you again, and good morning again, everyone. The item before you today is a request to take the initial steps to issue tax-exempt multifamily housing revenue bonds and hold a TEFRA hearing to facilitate the new construction of the Iris at San Ysidro Apartments. Next slide. The proposed development will entail the construction of a 100-unit transit-oriented affordable apartment building, which is made up of 99 affordable units and 1 unrestricted manager's unit. The project will be located at 1663 Dairy Mart Road in Council District 8. The proposed project's 99 affordable units will be comprised of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartments that will serve individuals and families with an area median income range of 25 to 60% for 55 years. 15 of these units are designated permanent supportive housing. National Core is a developer and has a long-standing record of successfully completing projects. Additionally, all active loans the developer has with the Housing Commission are in compliance. Resident services will be provided by the County of San Diego's Behavioral Health Services for the 15 PSH units. All other residents will receive services from Hope Through Housing Foundation, San Ysidro Health, and Casa Familiar. Next slide. The development is within a half mile of the Iris Trolley station and is a bus stop across the street. National Core applied to the Housing Commission's fiscal year 2020 Notice of Funding Availability for capital funds and vouchers and was subsequently awarded. Nearly 1 year ago, on June 11th, 2021, the Housing Commission's Board of Commissioners approved a residual receipts loan for the development of up to $2.3 million. In addition to the loan funds, the project was also awarded 25 federal project-based vouchers for the development. The future residents will be selected from the Housing Commission's project-based housing voucher waiting list. As previously mentioned, 15 of the units will be reserved for households experiencing homelessness through the County of San Diego's No Place Like Home program. Next slide. The site, which is represented by the red pin on the map, is located at 1663 Dairymont Road in Council District 8, which is just south of the 905 near Howard Lane Park. Next slide. The transit-oriented development is a half mile from the Irish Trolley station as represented on this slide. Next slide. The total development cost of the project will be approximately $56.4 million, which equates to a per unit cost of approximately $564,000. Notable sources of funding include a permanent loan, loans from the Housing Commission, County of San Diego and City of San Diego, 4% tax credit equity, and contributed GP capital. Next slide. As mentioned before, the units will be restricted at 25 to 60% of area median income for 55 years, with rents ranging from $568 to $1,890 per month. Due to the county's No Place Like Home funding, 15 units at 25% AMI will be restricted to individuals experiencing homelessness. Next slide. Should this be approved today, the developer will apply for bonds and 4% tax credits on August 9th. Should the developer receive an award at the November 30th SDLEC and TCAC meeting, we would then bring the project forward for final bond authorization approvals in January 2023 and February 2023 to the Housing Commission Board and Housing Authority, respectively. They would then close financing and start construction spring 2023 and complete in spring 2025. Next slide. Here's an architect's rendering of the proposed development. Next slide. National Corps will serve as the developer, general contractor, and property manager for the Iris at San Ysidro Apartments. The County of San Diego Behavioral Health Services, Hope Through Housing Foundation, San Ysidro Health, and Casa Familiar will all provide social services, and Studio E Architects will be the architect. The remainder of the development team will be selected at a later date. Next slide. You are considering approvals to take the preliminary steps to issue up to $35 million in tax-exempt multifamily housing revenue bonds and $2.1 million in taxable bonds. Approval of the bond issuance and Tax Equity and Fiscal Responsibility Act, TEFRA, resolutions does not commit the Housing Authority to issue bonds. The bonds will not constitute a debt of the city. If bonds are ultimately issued for the project, the bonds will not financially obligate the city, the Housing Authority, or the Housing Commission because security for the repayment of the bonds will be limited to specific private revenue sources of the project. Next slide. Staff recommends that the board take the actions detailed in the staff report and shown on the slide. Next slide. This concludes the presentation. I, along with representatives from National Corps, Bond Council, and the Financial Advisor, are all available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott, do we have any callers?
There are no callers on this item. Thanks.
Okay. Do we have any commissioner questions or comments?
Who's a developer again, please?
National Corps.
Correct, National Corps.
One thing that stands out to me about this project is we always say the lasagna financing. That is a long list of financing streams that they put together. I mean, that shows, I can't imagine the amount of work that went into lining up all of those. But I was curious because we talked about this in previous meetings. There is is it a diff fee reduction or deferral? How does that come? I'm just curious because we are always trying to chip away at those costs. Could you guys provide a little bit more information on that point?
So what the diff fees are for this project? So this one specifically, it's because it's in San Ysidro, it's just over $11,000 per unit, which would equate to about $1.1 million for the 100 units.
Yeah, thank you. But in the financing, there was the RT, the Regional Transportation Congestion Impact Program fee / diff, and then it was like a reduction or a deferral. Sorry.
Okay, now I get, sorry.
The waiver, it was a waiver. I'm sorry. Yeah. So that seems to happen infrequently. So just curious.
So because of the affordability of the project, they can apply for waivers for certain fees like this. And if they have an affordable housing agreement, then they can apply for fees. So that fund, those funds that would be typically used to pay for those fees are able to be waived. And then they can kind of equal out there.
Thank you. That's very, very helpful for us to know as we continue to look at the fees as they get added on top of those and figuring out a way to be successful here. Okay, sorry, that was I think it's a really wonderful project generally, but that stood out to me. Commissioner Vasquez, you have your hand up.
Yes, again, it was difficult for me to find out, to determine based off of the executive summary, who owns the property currently.
National Corps purchased the property in October of last year.
From who?
I'm going to defer over to National Corps. John or somebody can respond to that one.
Private seller.
Okay, so not the county or the city.
No, it is not. It is not surplus land. It's a private seller transaction.
Okay, and then the other question is, I couldn't, again, based off of the executive summary, I couldn't locate how many people are going to be displaced by the redevelopment of the property.
2 residents, 2.
2? Okay. And then I noticed that there's going to be a relocation benefits or money. So that's, so that's not an issue. Do you know how much of the relocation or how much assistance will be provided for the 2 units?
That is being reviewed right now by Overland Pacific, our professional relocation consultants, based upon availability of other sites where they can be relocated to, those rents, their income levels, etc. It's a pretty down and deep analysis.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Madam Chair, may we be provided with sort of the relocation information collectively as more projects like this is done?
Yes, we can make sure to provide that information.
Also, they are, if they're eligible income-wise, commissioners, they are encouraged to get on the waiting list to live at the project.
Thank you. Thank you for the questions. Anything further on this one? Commissioner Vasquez, you're off mute. Oh, nothing further. Okay. Do we have any other questions or comments?
Motion to move.
Okay, I'll go ahead and second that. We'll go and call the vote. Vice Chair Klipner.
Aye.
Commissioner Hester. I can see you saying aye.
But I want to recognize, not my role, but Commissioner Vasquez has.
Oh, Commissioner Vasquez. You're on mute. Sorry.
Commissioner Hessler. So I'm sorry, I just wanted to see whether or not we would be able, once the covenant expires, if the Housing Commission can have an option to purchase the property. And I know we're in the middle of the motion, so I guess a point of information.
Okay. If you wouldn't mind, can we move through the vote? And then, because I think I can see a trend with this conversation, and as I've understood it, there is sort of a mechanism here, and it's worth returning to that. So if it's okay, we'll go ahead and finish the vote and then return to that point of order. Is that okay?
If that's the case, then I'll abstain from the vote.
Okay. All right. Well, then we'll go ahead and pause the vote. Staff, if you guys wouldn't mind walking through, historically, I've understood that the commission has right of first refusal on these affordable projects when they come up for sale, or that we have been engaged. But if you wouldn't mind kind of walking through what that looks like.
So essentially, when Colin, were you going to mention something?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay, so we have the 15-year purchase option right now, and as Colin described earlier, that's typically in line with what TCAC will, when they will refinance and reapply for, resyndicate, or apply for bonds to rehab the property. And so at that time, we have the option to purchase. We'll go through this. We have guidelines kind of written up as to how we approach this, where we have to ask for the pro forma, what's their process, and then we have a certain time frame to actually exercise the right to purchase or not. And it's typically 2 to 3 years, whatever is written in the actual agreement itself. So at that time, we'll determine whether we're actually going to move forward with exercising our option through the assistance with a third-party financial consultant. And then if we exercise it, then, as you know, we'll purchase it. Otherwise, we will enter into another 15-year option at that point to be like, okay, in 15 years from now, are we going to purchase it at that point?
And I'll just add that for this specific project, when they applied through the NOFA for their original loan award, they did commit to providing the 15-year option agreement. As Jennifer mentioned, the option has a 3-year term. Just so we have that option for 15 years, the affordability covenants last for 55. So our loan terms and these bonds that you're set to potentially approve all carry a 55-year affordability covenant that runs with the land and would survive foreclosure.
Correct. My issue is that just in Penasquitos alone, we lost 500 affordable housing units because after the covenant expired, there was no option to purchase, and that was after 40 years. So, you know, and there was an extension that was put out, but between PQ Village and Crestabella, I don't remember the previous name, but between it's PQ Pacific and Crestabella Developments, the units, you know, the land became more valuable than the units on top, and it was with a private owner, and so the private owner was able to sell it at fair market value units, increase density, and decrease affordability. So I just want to make sure we don't make that mistake again. And you know, I don't even know of all the places where this has occurred.
Yeah, you bring up an excellent point, and what we have in our agreements provides protection for that for the first 55 years, as well as the option to purchase in year 15.
Yeah, because after the first 15 years, we'll enter into another option for the next 15 years, until we'll continue doing that.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and resume the vote. Did we get to Commissioner Hester? I don't remember where we even landed on the vote now. Okay. Is Commissioner Mitchell still here? I think we've lost him. So keep going. Commissioner Vasquez?
Yes.
I'll vote in favor as well. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, everybody. Our next item is item 100. The appointment of members to this board's committees and to the board of directors of the Housing Commission's nonprofit affiliate, Housing Development Partners. The phone line is now open for public comments about item 100. Please call 833-610-2513 to be placed in the queue. There was no written public comments submitted regarding this item. Again, the number to call is 833-610-2513. There is not a presentation on this item, but I am recommending the appointments that are detailed in the board report for this item. We'll take any public comment from callers. Scott, do we have any callers? We're probably a little early.
We do not have any callers yet. We have a little more than 1 minute left on the clock.
Okay, thank you.
That concludes the time, and there are no callers.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, do we have questions or comments or a motion?
Madam
Is there
Chair,
an
motion for item. We just voted, didn't we? Oh,
There's not a presentation on the item, it's just a list of the committee assignments. I feel like we've all spent so much time together on Zoom in the past month, which is really nice, but yeah. No presentation, so it's just a motion for those assignments.
Oh, motion move.
Okay. I'll second that one again.
Second.
Oh, I'll defer to Vice Chair Klempner on that one. We'll go ahead and call the vote then. Vice Chair Klempner,
Aye.
Commissioner Hester,
Aye.
Commissioner Vasquez,
Aye.
and I'll add my vote in favor. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, everybody. Our next item is item 104, the authorization for the Housing Commission to participate in the California Housing Finance Agency's Accessory Dwelling Unit Grant Program. The phone line is now open for public comments about item 104. You can call 833-610-2513 to be placed in the queue. There's no written public comments submitted regarding this item, but again, that number is 833-610-2513. We'll take public comments after the staff presentation, which will come to us from Vice President of Single Family Housing Finance, Sujata Raman, and she'll be presenting whenever she's ready.
Good morning, Chair Benvenuto and Commissioners. I'm Sujata Raman, the Vice President of Single Family Housing Finance. The item before you today is a request for the Housing Commission to enter into a lender participation agreement with California Housing Finance Agency, also known as CalHFA, to participate in their ADU grant program and utilize their grant funds in conjunction with the Housing Commission's own ADU finance pilot program. Next slide. Based on research and lessons learned from the Housing Commission's ADU development pilot, the Housing Commission launched an ADU finance pilot program in April of this year to assist homeowners earning up to 80% of the area median income to build ADUs. The ADU finance pilot program is an approved model program in the Affordable Housing Fund annual plan, which has previously been approved by the board and city council. Homeowners may choose to build a detached or attached ADU, including garage conversions or a manufactured ADU. They also have the option of using City of San Diego's pre-approved design plans as an added benefit. Next slide. The Housing Commission's ADU finance program provides financial assistance through a construction loan of up to $200,000 at 1% simple interest. Also included in the program is comprehensive technical assistance for participating homeowners. Through a competitive request for proposal procurement process, the Housing Commission has engaged an ADU consultant to provide the technical assistance. This experienced consultant is expected to assist the homeowner with site feasibility, permits, design, and construction management, all at no cost to the homeowner. Next slide. The target population for the ADU finance pilot program is homeowners with low income. The program would fund loans by using $500,000 of city inclusionary housing funds, which have been allocated to this pilot program in the Housing Commission's approved fiscal year 2022 budget, and a proposed $2.2 million that's included in the fiscal year 23 budget. An ADU built with financing through this program would be required to remain affordable for 7 years for a renter household with income up to 80% of San Diego's area median income. Next slide. This table provides an overview of the Housing Commission's ADU finance pilot program and some of the qualifying criteria. The Housing Commission's loan would fund the construction of the ADU. The loan would then be refinanced into a permanent loan either by the bank that's collaborating with the Housing Commission on this project or any lender the homeowner chooses. Upon completion of construction, the lender would fund a permanent mortgage loan for the borrower through a refinance. At that time, the Housing Commission's construction loan would be paid back and the funds could be recycled into more ADU production. Next slide. CalHFA is the state's affordable housing lender that provides financing to low and moderate income households. In September of 2021, CalHFA launched an ADU grant program that was made available to homeowners through loan officers at participating banks and lenders. During the past few months, the Housing Commission began discussions with CalHFA to collaborate with them to use their grant funds in conjunction with the Housing Commission's own ADU finance program. It should be noted that we are one of the first housing authorities entering into such a partnership with CalHAFA to benefit low-income homeowners. The CalHAFA's ADU grant program makes up to $40,000 per homeowner available to reimburse pre-development and non-reoccurring closing costs associated with the construction of an ADU. Next slide. The collaboration with CalHAFA, where their ADU grant program can be combined with the Housing Commission's ADU Finance Pilot Program, will be an additional benefit to homeowners. Once the homeowner is approved by the Housing Commission and the refinance mortgage lender, the homeowner will apply for the ADU grant with CalHAFA. Portion of CalHAFA's $40,000 grant may be used for the Housing Commission's ADU Technical Assistance Consultant. Remaining grant funds will be applied towards other pre-development costs incurred by the homeowner. This lowers the ADU construction loan principal that the homeowner has to repay. Next slide. In summary, the proposed request is for the Housing Commission to enter into a lender participation agreement with CalHAFA to participate in their ADU grant program and utilize the grant funds with the Housing Commission's own ADU Finance Pilot Program. Staff requests that the Housing Commission take the actions detailed in the staff report and shown on the slide. Next slide. This concludes my presentation, and I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Sujata. Scott, do we have any callers?
We do not have any callers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Vasquez?
Yes, thank you. So I like the overall plan. The question I have for you is, my understanding based off of the executive summary is that once the loan is paid, then those funds can be used for a different unit. Is there any kind of restriction through the state agency or through our agency to require that the unit is, like an occupancy requirement for the next 5 years, et cetera? Because right now what I'm seeing is because the property values are so high that people will sell their property, and then the units are no longer considered 0 to 80%, 0 to 80% AMI at that point, right? So I want to make sure that if we're going to invest, that the person is going to occupy the property for a certain period of time.
Correct. Good question. So the ADU itself is restricted to a tenant that makes no more than 80% of the area median income, and those restrictions will be in place for 7 years. As for the main homeowner, they can choose to sell because we can't really restrict that, but the new homeowner will need to assume the restriction.
Okay, and just as a follow-up, is that per the state guidelines that it's only 7 years, it's not 15 or 55 like in other projects?
No, the state doesn't have any guidelines for us to use our ADU grant, but these are the restrictions when we provide the $200,000 construction loan. So these are our program restrictions.
Okay, can you, again, as a follow-up, can you address the issue as to why it's only 7 and not 15 or 55?
Yeah, absolutely. So we conducted a lot of research and analyzed other ADU programs throughout California and actually throughout the nation. We looked at both successful and unsuccessful programs. Some were very challenging to find an uptake of applications. And based on our research, we found that the 7-year restrictions was the sweet spot. There were if you extend the restrictions to 15 years, they were not enough applicants agreeing to increase affordable housing and build ADUs.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments from commissioners? I just wanted to, I think my position on ADUs as a housing solution are well documented. I struggle with ADUs as a solution, but they're clearly one of the things that we are able to do locally. ADUs are getting built, And it is good that we're able to be beneficial to that process, because I know that getting an ADU built is still not a cheap exercise. It's not a quick one. And it does require a significant amount of resources that most homeowners don't just have lying around. But I want to commend staff for finding ways to augment an existing program with state funds and really build that out to find more success. So, because we could have certainly just shrugged and said our program is fine. We don't need to continue to try to expand it or improve upon it, but staff did, and that initiative I just want to give some credit to. But is there a motion? I'm actually happy to make the motion. Is there a second?
And
Thank you, Commissioner Hester. We'll go ahead and call the vote. Vice Chair Klumpner,
Aye.
Commissioner Hester,
I,
Commissioner Vasquez,
I'm going to have to vote no because 7 years isn't enough for a covenant.
okay. I'll add my vote in favor. So that is 3 voting yes and 1 voting no. Motion carries. Item 105, the approval of the contract between the Housing Commission and Father Joe's Villages to operate the city's bridge shelter at Golden Hall.
Excuse me. Yeah, Chuck Christensen here.
Hey, Chuck.
Under the Housing Commission's rules, in order to have an affirmative action taken, you need 4 votes in favor. So to the extent it was a 3-1, it failed.
Thank you. Motion failed. We'll move on. Actually, Chuck, on that note, could I request that this be forwarded on to the Housing Authority for a vote?
You absolutely can do that.
Do I need another commissioner to do so?
Yeah, what you should do is have somebody make a motion to forward it, and or Jeff can forward it himself as acting executive director of the Housing Authority.
I'm comfortable having a commission. It looked like, unless somebody
So
else-
moved.
Yeah.
I'll second that one. So 2 commissioners can forward on.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, item 105, the approval of the contract between the Housing Commission and Father Joe's Villages to operate the city's bridge shelter at Golden Hall. The phone line is open for public comments about item 105. Please call 833-610-2513 to be placed in the queue. There were no written public comments submitted regarding this item. Again, that number is 833-610-2513. We'll take public comments after the staff presentation, and that will come from Casey Snell, the Director of Housing First Administration, and Jonathan Herrera, the Special Programs Manager and Senior Policy Advisor. Whenever you're both ready.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. Today we are presenting staff's recommendation to approve an agreement between the Housing Commission and Father Joe's Villages to operate the City of San Diego Bridge Shelter for families, transition age youth, and single adults at Golden Hall. Next slide, please. The Housing Commission administers agreements for the City of San Diego's homeless shelters and services programs based on a memorandum of understanding between the Housing Commission and the City of San Diego that first took effect on July 1st, 2010. The Housing Commission and City entered into a separate MOU for the administration and operation of the city's bridge shelter programs. The current bridge shelter MOU will expire on June 30th, 2023. The city's bridge shelter programs were approved by the Housing Authority in October of 2017 with the capacity at that time to serve up to 700 individuals and families experiencing homelessness. Currently, the 3 bridge shelter programs have a capacity to serve up to 938 people. Next slide, please. With the conclusion of Operation to Shelter a Home in March of 2021, operations resumed at Golden Hall and were expanded to incorporate shelter for single adult men on the first floor. The program is currently the largest city-funded shelter with a capacity to serve up to 534 individuals, 324 beds for single adult men, 146 beds and 18 cribs for families with minor children, and 46 beds for transition-age youth. The program continues to support the Community Action Plan on Homelessness for the City of San Diego, which identifies shelter interventions as critical entry points to the city's crisis response system and necessary to facilitate permanent housing placements. Next slide, please. On March 7th, 2022, the Housing Commission issued a request for proposal seeking an operator for the City of San Diego bridge shelter at Golden Hall. Respondents were given the option to submit a proposal for 1 or both floors of the shelter program and instructed to identify the target population they would serve. The RFP was posted and made available for download on Planet Bid's website through both the Housing Commission and City of San Diego's portals. 921 notifications were sent through the Planet Bid system, and 20 prospective bidders downloaded the solicitation. On March 31st, 2022, the RFP closed and Father Joe's Villages was the sole respondent. This highlights the limited availability of homeless service providers with the experience, capacity, and expertise or desire to operate shelter programs of this size. A source selection committee evaluated and scored the response based on the following criteria: program operations, service coordination and residential services, care coordination, equity and inclusion, community considerations, cost proposal, and organizational experience and capacity. Father Joe's Villages proposal was deemed a responsive and qualified response and was recommended by the evaluation committee for award of the contract. Next slide, please. Father Joe's Villages has more than 70 years of experience in serving individuals and families experiencing homelessness. Through its array of housing and supportive services, the organization serves more than 14,000 men, women, and children on an annual basis. During the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, Father Joe's Villages operated over 400 beds at the San Diego Convention Center as part of Operation Shelter to Home. The organization currently operates multiple city-funded shelter and service programs, including the Day Center for Homeless Adults, the Bridge Shelter at Golden Hall, and the Paul Marable Center and the Bishop Maher Center. These programs provide more than 900 beds for households experiencing homelessness. In February, Father Joe's Villages also celebrated the grand opening of its St. Teresa of Calcutta Villa development, which includes 270 permanent housing units for people who previously experienced homelessness. Next slide, please. Basic shelter services will include, but are not limited to, services shown on the slide. Next slide, please.
In line with community standards and best practices, the Bridge Shelter at Golden Hall operates with a low barrier service model in which participation in services or maintaining one's sobriety is not an eligibility criteria. Clients are free to bring their personal belongings, service animals, and pets as well. On-site case management staff will connect with clients shortly after they are enrolled to develop an individualized housing plan. Father Joe's Villages and Housing Commission staff regularly participate in case conferencing sessions with Housing Commission technical assistance teams, including the Homeless Response Center staff. These sessions assess staff caseloads, client progress, and barriers clients encounter in navigating the crisis response system. In addition to case management staff, clients also have access to a comprehensive array of supportive services, both on-site and through Father Joe's Village's main campus in East Village. Outreach staff funded through the program participate in the city's coordinated street outreach program, providing street-based case management for unsheltered individuals in an assigned geographic location. As part of the program's Good Neighbor policy, program staff meet with city and community stakeholders to solicit feedback and address concerns related to the operations of the shelter program. Program staff monitor the external site perimeter and coordinate security operations with the city concourse and the San Diego Civic Theater. Next slide. In addition to the standard portfolio of services, Father Joe's Villages will provide in the new contracted program, a few service model enhancements have also been incorporated. They will help to better meet client needs and improve site safety, as well as day-to-day management of operations. These changes include increasing substance abuse services with the addition of 2 full-time alcohol and drug specialists, other drug specialists to support harm reduction strategies, and enhance security resources to support safety and the security of residents, staff, and the local community. Final element is the addition of committed staff resources for higher level oversight of day-to-day activities at the shelter site. Next slide, please. The Housing Commission requires its subcontractors to take various COVID-19 precautions and to be in compliance with all local, state, and federal public health orders. Precautions are in alignment with the guidance from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The Housing Commission coordinates with the County of San Diego for regular COVID-19 testing and vaccination opportunities at city shelter sites, the frequency of which is determined by the county. Next slide, please. As outlined in the table on this slide, operating costs for the 12-month contract term from July 1st 2022 through June 30th, 2023 are $10,458,046. Funding for the program is anticipated to be homeless housing assistance and prevention program funds and will be determined through the city's fiscal year 2023 budgeting process. Future contract terms will be exercised upon the appropriation of funds by the city for this purpose. Next slide. Staff recommends that the Housing Commission Board take the actions detailed in the staff report and shown on the next two slides. Please note that the staff report has reference to a prorated amount and contract extension. Originally, we anticipate taking this item to the board in July. When we're able to move forward with this item at today's meeting, some of the language in the report was not updated. The contract term and amounts referenced in this presentation and on this and the following slides are accurate. Next slide. Next slide. That concludes our presentation. We are joined by Ruth Brulin, Chief Program Officer with Father Joe's Villages, and we're available to answer any questions.
Thank you. Scott, do we have any callers on this item?
We do not have any callers. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions, comments? Commissioner Vasquez?
Yes, thank you. So again, it's difficult based off of the executive summary to see who exactly owns the property. It sounds like this is a lease agreement of some sort. Is it, so if you could inform me on that piece.
Sure. Yeah, Golden Hall is on the city concourse, so it's owned by the city. There's a licensing agreement between Father Joe's and the city for access to that site.
Okay, so we own the ground, they have a ground lease.
Well, they a license, yeah, a license agreement for access to parts of Golden Hall.
Okay, so then if there is are there any units on the property that are currently being occupied?
So this was originally more of a conference or event space. So there's the downstairs Golden Hall, which has a large event space and lobby. There's the upstairs that has multiple rooms that are smaller conference rooms. The family shelter and the Tay shelter are in the upstairs. There's also some office space that Father Joe's staff occupy. There's no housing on this site. So this is all shelter. And then the downstairs is a single male adult shelter of up to 324 beds, which is in the main event space of what used to be the main event space of Golden Hall.
And are those people going to be displaced during the reconstruction? Or?
No, this isn't this is just a shelter contract. So this is to renew the operator contract to provide the shelter at this space. This is not a housing or new construction or rehab project.
Okay. And then are there any, or with existing terms, again, I'm going to reiterate, I would like to see the actual documents instead of the summary, just so that I can actually review the information. As Mr. Herrera explained, like the information varied between the executive summary and the documents provided with the slide. The documents provided regarding this issue didn't include the lease agreement. The existing amended lease agreement, which is, I believe, that its 5th rendition. So that being said,
that's just to be clear, I just want to make sure that we're clear on this. It's not a lease agreement between the commission or this and the city. It's not our lease agreement. It's a lease agreement between it's a license agreement between Father Joe's and the city, and a license agreement that we cannot execute and the city cannot finalize and draft until the operator agreement is executed. So the licensing agreement is and the final negotiations of the licensing agreement are contingent on the operator agreement being approved and executed first. So I wouldn't necessarily, I could attach the previous one, but it wouldn't necessarily look like what the actual one that will be entered into between Father Joe's and the city will look like, because that has to happen second.
No, and I appreciate that clarification. And that's my point, though. I would like to see what the existing terms are, being the fact that, you know, this happens often where we renew whatever contract, whatever MOU agreement that we have with other parties, and not necessarily, and I want to make sure that basically that the party that we're doing business with have met the terms of the pre-existing agreement before moving forward and extending out that credit or extending out that partnership.
Certainly understand, we just don't have any authority over that license agreement. That's so because it's not ours, we just don't have any authority over what that license agreement ends up looking like.
Right. No, I understand that. So has Father Joe complied with all of the terms of the license agreement thus far?
So again, because it's not with us, we don't have authority over that license agreement, and so they don't report to us on that. That's with the city real estate department. So the license agreement is between Father Joe's and the city real estate department. We have the operator agreement. There are maintenance conditions between Father Joe's and the city that we help facilitate communications around maintenance. So we do not anticipate there being any challenges with Father Joe's and the city executing the licensing agreement once the operator agreement has come into play. And we will have joint meetings between the city facilities team, the city homeless strategies and solutions department, Father Joe's, and our staff to make sure that as issues come up, frankly, it's an old building. Because it's an older building, it does need a lot of ongoing maintenance and repairs. So we have regular meetings between those four entities to make sure that whoever is responsible for particular items is carrying out those repairs. Majority of the items are related to city responsibilities, but there's the responsibility on Father Joe's to make sure the city is aware of them.
Okay. So without knowing what the status is, I'm not going to be able to be in favor of the motion, but I will lower my hand.
Are there any other questions?
I'm going to say, I think we need to just forward this to the Housing Authority, if I'm understanding correct, Chuck's guidance correctly.
Chuck, can you remind us if that earlier issue of needing 4 affirmative votes applies?
Yes, I can. And so the idea of having 2 individuals ask that it be forwarded is actually the city council and or the housing authority and or the city manager, who is now the mayor. So so those can pull it, but in addition, you can direct any member, and certainly the chair and vice chair can direct Jeff as the executive director of the housing authority. He may forward any matter on his own initiative. So
let's just do that, and we can move on to the next item.
I think that'd be a good idea.
No issue for me there, but I do want to, for the sake of making sure that everybody's had an opportunity. Commissioner Hester, do you have any questions, anything in particular about this that you'd like to know? Okay. I mean, I was going to comment that the single respondent was pretty telling, and in previous meetings we've learned that the size of this is really prohibitive for other folks, but I've understood that there was opportunities to bid on chunks, and there was flexibility in that, and or to respond to pieces or specific programs. I appreciate the flexibility that came there. It goes back to the conversation, I think, in part that we had a couple months, weeks, time means nothing anymore, prior, about workforce, particularly this workforce that responds and works in these shelters. I know that it is very hard for recruitment, the various providers that we have, and we don't even have a large pool of providers in San Diego. That can make it challenging, but it is something that I think when this goes to the Housing Authority to call that out, a single respondent, I'm appreciative of the respondents we have in San Diego, but it doesn't make anybody better that lacks competition or we always want to talk about having a robust workforce here. So hopefully the Housing Authority takes note of that, but there's plenty more for them to pick at when it comes to this issue. So thank you for the staff presentation. With that, we'll move on to item 110, and this is an informational workshop about the city's eviction prevention program. The phone line is now open for public comments about item 110. You can call 833-610-2513 to be placed in the queue. There were no written public comments. Again, you can call 833-610-2513. Those public comments will come after the staff presentation. The presenters for this item are Senior Vice President of Compliance and Equity Assurance, Deborah Fischel-Falk, Director of Compliance and Equity Assurance, George Williams, and Legal Aid Society's CEO, Greg Knoll. You can begin whenever you're ready.
Good morning, thank you. And can you, for a quick minute, take down the presentation? Just for a quick minute, Scott, I need to. Okay, I need to do something real quick. Thank you for your patience with this. All righty, I'm ready to go. Thank you. Good morning, Chair Benvenuto and commissioners. We are presenting an update on the City of San Diego's Eviction Prevention Program, which was launched this past December. Our presentation includes background information, current eviction protections in place, program outcomes through April of this year, demographic data, and updates to the scope of services for the program for fiscal year 2023. Next slide, please. The Housing Commission oversees the City of San Diego's Eviction Prevention Program. The program helps renters with low income in the city facing eviction for non-payment of rent due to the financial impact of the COVID pandemic. Legal Aid Society of San Diego operates the program through a contract with the Housing Commission, which the Housing Commission Board and Housing Authority approved late last year. The program was developed to address the need for eviction prevention assistance after the statewide eviction moratorium expired on September 30th, 2021. The city's eviction prevention program is a centralized resource for renters with low income who face potential eviction. The program was created to help address a potential increase in evictions and confusion about eviction protections that are available for renter households. In March, state lawmakers enacted legislation that extended eviction protections through the end of this month. Next slide, please. The Housing Commission's contract with Legal Aid Society is for an amount not to exceed $5 million. The contract includes provisions to ensure that the actual amount paid is only for the services provided and that charges are not incurred for services that are not rendered. Federal Community Block Grant funds through the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security, or CARES Act, fund the program. The agreement included an initial term beginning December 13th, 2021 through June 30th, 2022, with an option to renew the agreement for a full year beginning July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2023. For its operation of the program, Legal Aid Society awarded subcontracts to the ACE Institute and City Heights Community Development Corporation to provide the majority of the program's outreach, education, and awareness activities. ACE provides virtual and in-person Know Your Rights workshops and conducts phone and door-to-door canvassing to advise tenants about the program and the available services. City Heights Community Development Corporation also provides education. They awarded subcontracts to UCSD to create the UCSD Homelessness Hub Database Survey and to other local nonprofits, including Casa Familiar, Chicana Federation, and the San Diego Refugee Communities Coalition. Through the subcontracts, these organizations reach out to their members, hard-to-reach populations, and tenants in at-risk zip codes regarding the program and its resources. They register them for Know Your Rights workshops and provide tenant rights education. Next slide, please. The Eviction Prevention Program was developed at a time when evictions were expected to increase due to the end of the statewide eviction moratorium. In addition, the program was meant to help San Diego residents know and understand the eviction preventions that were in place at that time. Those protections have prevented a significant influx of eviction cases that had been anticipated. In addition, at the end of March of this year, the statewide eviction protections were extended through June 30th, 2022, with the passage of State Assembly Bill 2179. For example, a tenant generally is protected from eviction for non-payment of rent if they applied for emergency rental assistance on or before March 31st, 2022, and their application is still pending. Specific conditions must be met to evict a tenant as shown on this slide. The expiration of these protections on June 30th may result in higher numbers of households requesting help from the city's eviction prevention program in the coming months. Next slide, please. In addition to the statewide protections related to the financial impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, the City Council adopted a temporary moratorium on no-fault evictions in April. A no-fault eviction occurs when a landlord ends a lease with a tenant for reasons that do not involve any alleged non-payment of rent, wrongful behavior, or lease violation by the tenant. This city law temporarily prohibits these types of evictions. However, it includes a few exceptions that are shown on this slide. Under this law, tenants are still required to pay rent per their lease agreement with the landlord. Evictions are allowed for non-payment of rent, wrongful behavior, or lease violations. The city's no-fault eviction moratorium became effective on May 22nd, 2022, and remains in effect through September 30th, 2022, or 60 days after the end of the local state of emergency as declared by the mayor, whichever comes first. Now I will turn it over to George to provide details regarding the program elements and the scope of services. Next slide, please.
Through this program, eligible tenants can receive full legal representation, including the pre-eviction and eviction process, settlement negotiations, and through trial if necessary. To be eligible, tenants are required to reside at an address in the city of San Diego, have a household income at or below 80% of the area median income, which is currently $104,100 per year for a family of 4, have an obligation to pay rent, and at least one household member has reduced income or financial hardship due to the pandemic. Next slide, please. In addition, limited legal services are available through clinics, hotlines, and appointments, which can be virtual or in person. These types of services include assistance completing COVID-19 declarations, formal responses to eviction notices, formal responses to unlawful detainers, and requests for reasonable accommodations. Next slide, please. Education and public awareness are also key components of the program. Legal Aid Society provides training and technical assistance related to tenants' rights and eviction protections. This assistance is provided to tenants with low income, community-based organizations serving tenants with low income, and landlords who are renting to tenants with low income. Awareness about the program is promoted through multilingual media campaigns and community events such as Know Your Rights workshops, which are held virtually. The program also offers services that include public workshops, training, published guides, a program hotline, and a program webpage. Legal Aid Society tracks and reports data about the program. Legal Aid Society's Chief Executive Officer, Greg Knoll, will now share the program's outcomes. Next slide, please.
Do we have Mr. Knoll? I see him on the list.
I was,
Oh, there we go.
excuse me, I was muting myself. The total unduplicated eligible low-income tenants that were assisted grew steadily from the beginning of the program to the end of April and numbered 207 individuals. The referrals to community resources totaled 4,180. The total public workshops were 19. Total targeted trainings were 9. And the total hotline calls received and responded to were 429. Next slide, please. The total public awareness events, 37. Total eligible low-income tenants receiving full legal assistance is 20, And then the total eligible low-income tenants receiving limited legal assistance, like advice and counsel, was 183. Total additional services provided to eligible low-income tenants, 336. Next slide, please. 207 total households were involved, and 112 of those were women head of households. And you can see the breakdown in extremely low income were 116 of the 207, 56 of the 207 were very low income, 35 were low to moderate income, and that's the totals. Next slide, please. You can see that there has been quite a breakdown in the communities that have been historically left behind. While we have 39% of our clients in this program that are white, 31.4% are Black and African American, 1.4% are Asian, 1.9% American Indian, 1.9% Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander. And then the total of multiracial individuals was 21.7, with Black and white being 0.9%, and American Indian, Alaskan Native mixed with Black, African American is 0.5%. You can see that compared to Hispanic, not Hispanic, the number of Hispanic clients was 29%, and 71% were people that declared themselves to not be of Hispanic origin. Next slide, please. I'm sorry, I went too fast. This is the Hispanic slide indicating 29% of our clients were Hispanic or identified that way, and 71% did not. There was only one person out of the entire group that was surveyed, which are all our clients, that declined to give their race or ethnicity. Next slide, please. The additional assistance provided the 336 tenants that were mentioned earlier in the slides. 304 of them received our court clinic unlawful detainer assistance, which helps them fill out their forms so that they can file their answer timely. 10 also received clinic assistance from the civil harassment restraining order clinic and received restraining orders against their landlords. And 22 received our case management services, which are becoming pretty popular and, if I do say so, famous. Case managers will help these clients that come to us that are stressed, maybe have some clinical diagnosis or just have some depression that is rearing its head because of the thought of being homeless. And the case managers help them get their act together with all of their receipts and everything, and also help them make sure that they appear for all manner of appointments, and also do wraparound services for, do you need any health care? Do you have food insecurity? So that when they get done with us in this program, they've been taken care of from a holistic point of view. We also provide services in English and following other languages thus far. The legal services have actually also been in Spanish and Somali. Outreach and education services, you can see the large number of languages that we have used. Social media posts have been translated into Arabic and beyond. Interpreters for live workshops, many of the Arabic, South Asian languages, and of course, American Sign Language. We have people on our staff that are fluent in American Sign Language as well. Video workshops, Burmese and Karen. Pre-recorded educational presentations have been produced in Spanish thus far. Next slide. Through the end of April, we our phone bank or the phone bank for our subcontractors made 6,432 calls on tenants' rights. They knocked on 191 doors in their door-to-door canvassing. They made contacts through text, emails, flyers, and/or member meetings of reaching 5,000 plus. Educational workshop registrations, 474, and the social media posts were 37. Next slide.
As noted.
Yeah, this is you, George.
Thank you. As noted earlier in the presentation, statewide eviction protections have mitigated against a potentially significant increase in evictions since this program launched. The statewide protections remain in place until the end of this month. After they expire, more people in the city of San Diego may seek help from this program. Housing Commission staff, Legal Aid Society, and City of San Diego staff have been meeting regularly to discuss progress and monthly reports. Based on those discussions, we will be including additional services to the program for fiscal year 2023 when the contract renewal option is exercised. Additional direct outreach efforts will be made to COVID-19 Housing Stability Assistance Program applicants. The program will also help with application fees, security deposits, moving expenses, transportation to appointments, and settlement agreements. Expert witness fees will also be covered as part of the services offered by Legal Aid Society. In addition, anyone will be able to attend the workshops this program offers regardless of their income. However, the program will continue to help only households with low income. Next slide, please.
That concludes our presentation, and we're available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Scott, do we have any callers?
We do not have any callers. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions, comments? No. Commissioner Hester, did you just wave?
I raised because I couldn't get to my mute button fast enough. Thank you, Deborah, and your team. We have access to that slide, yeah? Because I don't think the presentation matched the sort of the talking point, so I got a little confused. I'd like to take a look at it again, but thank you for the presentation.
You're welcome. And yes, you should have the slides, and if not, we'll get them to you right away.
Yeah, thank you for this. I know that the commissioners in previous comments or previous meetings when we've talked about the eviction wave, and I mean, the numbers clearly show the uptick, right? That we can see where this is going, and the city has its additional protections. Can you, I mean, obviously the outreach is happening, but any sort of quick takes on the disparities about really reaching into some of those other ethnic minorities in San Diego? Because obviously the white population is taking up the opportunity. It looks like, it was, what was it, 30-some%?
Yes.
What is it? Is it maybe some inherent distrust, just an unwillingness to really, or a complete misunderstanding of the process? What do you think is really keeping folks from engaging?
Well, that's the reason. If you wanted me to take that, Deborah.
Well, no, I'm wondering if Laura could answer that question since she's doing the outreach portion.
Sure. Hi, Lauren.
Hi, thank you so much. Yes, I'd be glad to answer that. I think I appreciate the question. It's a kind of an ongoing issue. It took us a couple of months just to do startup because some of the subcontractors had to hire. Doing outreach for some of them is not part of their mission. For others, it is. In the last couple of months, we've seen a huge increase. And I'm also glad you asked because we actually have our newest numbers up to present in terms of workshop registrations. It's actually over 1,000. So we've had a huge increase in that. And we've also had a huge increase in in-person workshops, which has been great because we have an attorney, a housing attorney, who's our education coordinator per legal aid's request. And that person has been able to go to the in-person workshops and be translated into all those languages that you saw on that slide and had be able to answer a lot of questions directly. So a lot of people have received that direct counsel and then able to go to legal aid or a legal clinic that they need. So it is definitely, we've seen a big surge in April and May. So it's not as obvious here because the numbers were just through April. So thank you for asking.
No, thank you for that answer. And that's, I'm pretty confident I can guess the answer, but Deborah, we're also talking with our landlord partners, right? And that's probably a pretty frequent discussion. I'm thinking of the Rental Housing Association and Apartment Association, all those groups to make sure that.
Well, what we have had some workshops for landlords baked into this, and that's actually a really good suggestion that we'll extend. And our intent is to do some more direct outreach. So we'll add that we will do some more direct outreach to specific landlord associations, et cetera.
Thanks. Yeah, just taking any excuse off the table that, you know, folks didn't know. And some folks.
Sure.
It's an interesting dynamic out there right now. But thank you for this presentation. Thank you for being proactive. Another, you know, I want to give staff some credit for seeing what was coming and putting some things in place and make sure that we're, you know, we're bolstering that safety net. Are there any other questions or comments? This is an info item. Going once, going twice. Okay, so
I just wanted to say we're really grateful that San Diego this is the first time having publicly funded tenant outreach and education. I think it's really crucial and is making a huge difference. And as many avoidable evictions as we can avoid, you know, the better for all of us. So I just appreciate it very much. I wanted to tell you that. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a wonderful point. I appreciate you adding that. Well, with that in mind, unless there's anything final, we will go ahead and conclude today's meeting. This meeting is adjourned at 10:54. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you, Ms. Teixeira.